Okay, Jonah chapter 1.
Chapter 1.
The book of Jonah is a fantastic book. It's a true story. It actually happened. How do we know it's a true story?
It's in the Bible.
Okay, it's in the Bible, but there's another reason. Who validated that it is a true story? Jesus himself said that as Jonah was in the fish's belly, so will the Son of Man be in the earth during his resurrection, 3 days. So, and there's other confirmations stating that Jonah, the story of Jonah was absolutely true. And, you know, when it comes to television, I love true stories and I love documentaries. Because when you watch a movie and it's a true story, it's like, wow, this actually happened. So, Book of Jonah, I got things circled, underlined, other things written on the side of the margins. I'd encourage you to underline different verses and rate on the side of your margin or your Bible so that when you go back to it, you got additional information that helps you to understand the book. So you'll see what I mean by that. Starting in verse 1. Everybody got it?
Amen. What chapter?
Chapter 1. Okay, now the word of the Lord came unto Jonah, the son of Amittai, or whatever that word is, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry against it, for their wickedness is come up before me. And we know Nineveh is not an imaginary city. It's an actual city that they can dig for ancient ruins. It's a true region of the Middle East. So verse 3 is where we're going to start to take a look at things. But Jonah rose up to flee unto Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. So it says the word of the Lord came to Jonah. God wanted Jonah to do something. He wanted him to go to the Ninevites and preach to them repentance and to get things right. And Jonah did not want to do that. So we could call this book God's recovery. How did God get Jonah to recover from this major relapse he's about to enter into? It says Jonah rose up to flee unto Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. Who else ran from the presence of God?
Me. Adam. Peter.
Adam. Adam. It says Adam ran. When Adam ran from the presence of God, and God came looking for him. Amen. So here Jonah, it says he ran from the presence of God. And it says, and went down to Joppa. And I circled the word presence, and I underlined the word went down. Because whenever we relapse, we're always going down. We can't have the expectation that good things are going to happen. It says he went down to Joppa, and he found a ship going to Tarshish. Isn't it convenient that when you're in a state of relapse, you find usually what you're looking for? Amen. You know, Satan will make sure that it's convenient enough that you just happen to find what you're looking for. And he'll provide a means for you to continue that relapse. So it says that he went down, and he found a ship, and it says, so he paid the fare thereof. You know, money in his pocket. What would have happened if he had no money in his pocket during a state of relapse?
You're going to steal it, rob, kill, whatever it takes to get it.
But the money was a trigger where it says he paid the fare thereof. And in my Bible, I underline, paid the fare thereof. You know, when you're broke as broke can be, it does prevent you from doing certain things. But when you got money in your pocket, it says money speaks. And money can be a trigger. I remember when they were giving out money as a $10 a week allowance, and the cost was such a heavy weight. We couldn't afford to do that. So we had to eliminate it, and it created a stir. But one guy said, you know, what can I do with $10? I'm thinking, well, Well, I'll tell you what you can do. There's several things you can probably do with $10. One of them, you can get a prostitute for $10. And they were like, no, you can't. I said, well, she might have a missing tooth or two. I mean, you're not gonna get, a very high quality, but I tell you, $10 could probably get you just several types, of, and I said, money can be a trigger for a lot of things, and you can get some drugs for $10.
Yep.
I don't know what a marijuana cigarette is going for now, but I'm assuming you could get a joint for less than $10. I don't know what it is now. I have no idea. Huh? What?
You get $5 a sack, $10 a sack.
$20? I can't imagine that. But paid the fare thereof and went down into it to go with them unto Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. Who else was on the ship that you know of? He went onto this ship to sail to Tarshish. There was all unsaved people on that boat. There was not one person who had any kind of even remote relationship with God. So here's this man of God hanging out with all these unsaved people. And he's in a state of relapse. He's on a boat, and the boat is sailing to Tarshish. Tarshish would be modern-day Spain. It's the furthest point in Mediterranean Sea. That's a long ways. To tell you how vast and big the Mediterranean Sea is, recently a plane flying from Paris down to Egypt, did you hear the news? Yes. It got lost at sea in the Mediterranean Sea. They've been searching for days now and they still can't find it. They even know the certain area where it went down. That shows you Mediterranean Sea is like a gigantic ocean. It's not just a small area. And so here he set sail to Tarshish, the furthest point on the map at that time, Spain. You couldn't really go much further than that. You went out into the Atlantic Ocean. That was like the cliff. That was like the edge. His relapse took him to the deepest, darkest spots. He went so far away from God that he was headed towards Spain. And it says, but the Lord sent out a great wind into the sea.
The Holy Ghost.
So can you imagine a natural occurrence, a storm? To us, it's a natural occurrence. Mm-hmm. But God ordained this storm to occur specifically for Jonah.
Amen.
Sometimes God will ordain certain things. If we relapse and you're a child of God, God will ordain certain things to get you straightened out.
Amen. Come on.
I remember being lonely a couple different times after getting saved, and I remember going and Chester's filled with prostitutes. I mean, probably more back in my day than now, but back then it was like prostitute heaven. It was very bad. Had the highest crime rate in the United States.
3rd Street.
Highest crime rate in the United States. It was very, very bad. The worst syphilis outbreak in the entire state. So stuff was going on.
Yes, sir.
And I got this feeling and this notion of loneliness, and went looking, and found somebody that I thought appeared to be halfway decent, if you know what I mean. And was driving, and sure enough, the police start following us. And that's a wake-up call.
Yeah.
It says the wicked flee when no man pursues, but the righteous is as bold as a lion. Right. Well, for a moment there I was fleeing because my conscience was convicting me, and the police helped my conscience. So God's convicting me, and the police is behind me, and God's using the police to give me a wake-up call. He's sending the storm, in a sense. And the storm's following me as I'm driving down the street. I make a left and the storm follows me. I make a right and that storm is still following me. And I'll tell you, I made a lot of lefts and rights. And I'm like, now this is no coincidence. This is no coincidence that the police just happened by chance following me. They're following me on purpose.
That's right.
And I'll tell you, I was never so scared in my entire life. So she politely said, take me to my house, which would be the Bennett Project. I'm naming these names because we're far removed from that area. And Kevin understands the areas I'm talking about. The Bennett homes was at that time was the highest crime rate. It was the Badlands of the Badlands. It was a pretty bad area. And if you've noticed my color, have you noticed my color? It kind of stands out in certain cultural settings. So here I am. The police is following me, and the girl I got in the car is black and I'm white. Now, that's not odd, but the police see it as like, this guy don't belong. Yeah, I'm sure that's what they're thinking. And they follow me up, and they actually pull up at the Bennett homes, at the person's house. And she said, listen, you're my boyfriend.
She's trying to let you know what
She said, you're my boyfriend. I said, yeah, okay, I'm your boyfriend. I said, whatever you want me to be, I'm it. I'm your boyfriend. And so he talked to us, and I said, look, I'm just dropping my girl off at her house. What's the problem? And he talked to her, and I don't know what story she gave him separately, but it was enough to convince him to just drive off. And I'm like, wow, God, you spoke to me in that situation. You sent a storm that followed me like a tornado. It could have turned out different, is what I'm thinking in my mind. That's a wake-up call. I had another wake-up call. I don't know how much distance passed because it's been such a long time. I had another wake-up call. Same scenario. I had someone that was in the vehicle, and this was a bigger wake-up call. See, sometimes God gives you little wake-up calls, a little slap. Did you feel it? And then other times he takes a baseball bat, bam! Now, did you feel that? This was a little bigger bam. In the car, she started to take heroin while I'm driving. And I have some clean time, but having some issues of addictive behavior that I'm trying to deal with. And she's getting high. And this occurred near Northchester Baptist Church. Going down the street, around the corner, the police is following me, and I'm like, oh, I can just flash my entire life before me sitting in a prison cell because I'm implicated with drugs in my vehicle. I'm thinking, what have I done? I'm thinking, what have I done? God, and I'm praying all the time, God, get me out of this. I'm learning my lessons. Get me out of this. I'm learning, God. I'm having this conversation in my mind. And while I'm doing that, I'm telling her off and telling her, stop that stuff. Look behind us. and I said, I mean, I can't tell her to get rid of it. I'm like stuck. And again, left, right. And then I guess they got another phone. Another call, and they took off. And I'm thinking, and I'll tell you, within a couple blocks, I said, get out of this, get out of here. I mean, I didn't care about no loneliness at that point. All my loneliness went away. Boom. My lonely feeling, it just vanished. I'm like, ugh. ugh, get out of here. But I can tell you, storm after storm, God sends you a storm. If you're saved and you have a relationship with God like Jonah had, God will prepare a storm for you to wake you up. You can't run faster than God. I don't care, even if you're heading for Spain, you can't run faster than God. God will straighten you out one way or another. He'll keep sending signals. He keeps speaking in different ways. But each situation, you can be guaranteed it wasn't an accident. It wasn't a coincidence. This storm wasn't just happened to be a bad day and it was cloudy. God sent this storm deliberately and on purpose for Jonah and for him alone. So it says, and the Lord sent out a great wind into the sea, and there was a mighty tempest in the sea, so that the ship was like to be broken. Now you got to keep in mind, this is a vast ocean where you can get lost at sea. And here, this major storm, it's about to put at risk the entire boat. It wasn't no small rowboat. This was a pretty big-sized boat, and it was about to be broken up. So you can imagine the state of mind of everybody, trying to figure out how to save their life. It says, then the mariners, verse 5, were afraid and cried every man unto his God. So isn't it amazing how people get religious when they're when they're in trouble? You see it on the news all the time. All of us in the community, we pray for each other. Yeah. Well, I bet you yesterday you didn't do it. They all cried out to their own God and cast forth the wares that were in the ship into the sea to lighten it. And then catch this next statement. It says, but Jonah was gone down into the sides of the ship, and he lay and was fast asleep. What in the world's going on there? Everybody's ready to lose their life. The ship's about to sink. And Jonah's in the boat laying down there asleep. That shows you how blind and how complacent we can get when we're in that state of mind in our relapse. Totally oblivious. And even the storm sent by God at this point wasn't waking Noah up. So God had to get a steel baseball bat after this guy because the wooden bat wasn't working. So now he comes with that. Yeah, you ever see a steel baseball bat? The clang it makes when you hit something. I can imagine. So the shipmaster came to him and said unto him, what do you mean, O sleeper? Arise, call upon your God. They're all calling upon their God. And he's saying, what is up with you? You better get up and call whoever God you got. You better call on him. And he said, oh, you sleeper. That's like saying, you idiot. Get up. Don't you know we're about to die? Like, I can't imagine the kind of language that they'd use back in those days, but he's saying, oh, sleeper, arise, get up. And probably yelling at him. They probably all were ready to beat him up maybe, I don't know. Arise, get up, call on your God. If so be that God will think upon us that we don't perish. And they said every one to his fellow, come and let us cast lots, that we may know for whose cause this evil is upon us. So they cast lots, and the lot fell upon Jonah. Now, casting lots or drawing straws, short straw, long straw, that was a common practice to determine, back in those days, it was a common practice to determine what the truth is, or what needs to be done. They believed, this is what a common practice was, they believed, even back in the book of Acts, the disciples and even early Christians cast lots to determine certain things, because this is what they believed back in those days. They believed that God was so sovereign in every minute detail of life that there were no accidents.
You would choose what
So they believed that God was so sovereign in everyday operations. So they believed that if they made these, say, sample of these straws, one short, 3 other longer, and they say, okay, now you draw straws, you draw straw, you draw straw. Which one gets the short one? We believe that God is so sovereign that the one gets a short straw is the guy. That's how they viewed things back in those days. And God is very sovereign. But here it worked. Jonah got the short straw. Can you imagine? You know. Jonah got the short straw. It says they cast lots and the lot fell upon Jonah. Can you imagine what he was thinking?
Yeah.
You know, why did I get that short straw? Is God speaking to me or what? That's probably what he's thinking. Is God speaking to me? I got the short straw and I'm out in the middle of the ocean. What are these guys going to do to me? Have you ever gotten confronted in an alley and you were scared to death of what they might do? Have you ever got confronted when you were in a crack house or some other situation and you were scared to death? Let me tell you a time when I was scared to death. I got all kinds of stories to tell you. We all got stories to tell.
Absolutely.
Okay. Again, in Philadelphia, driving around, lonely again. You say, what's up with this guy? He keeps getting lonely. I'm just being honest with you. Addictive behavior, I had to work on it. It didn't just go away the day I received Christ. I had to work on things. It took me some time to work through some issues. I'm driving around and being selective and cautious. I pick someone up. And Philadelphia, for the most part, is a foreign territory. And so I said, where can we go? She said, I'll take you where we can go. So I'm completely at the mercy of a stranger taking me to a strange place. Takes me into an inner project of Philadelphia. And again, culturally, do you see my complexion?
Look like that shirt.
Take me into an inner projects, into the hood, into the ghetto, the hood. And she said, park here, and I park. You know, it's like the Pied Piper being led. You know, park here. Okay, Pied Piper. I park. Okay, we got to walk down the street a ways. So we walk down the street, and we pass a gang of guys standing out front. And, you know, they know I'm not from the neighborhood. I mean, so she said, look, you're with me, you're okay. So takes me in the corridors, the stairwells weren't any wider than this table. It goes way up. First floor, second floor, third floor, it goes way up. The buildings, the housing project's very high. It takes me way up, and I'm just following, not knowing. I'm just lonely, you know. It's amazing the things we can get into just to try to fulfill our lonely feelings. Takes me way up into a room. I walk in there and there's a bunch of people in there. The room's no bigger than John's office. And you got about 8 people sitting in there in a circle with a few little pieces of furniture along the edge. So quite packed. Takes me in there, and here I am. I'm sitting in basically a crack house with 8 people getting high. And I got some clean time. And there's some gross stuff that happened that I'm not going to... I did explain it out one time in our class, but I'm not going to go there. And so at some point, I didn't get high. But I'm thinking the whole time, I got to get out of here. I never did really get what I came for. All I'm thinking, the lonely feeling, hey, God cured it. I'm not lonely no more. It's amazing how God will cure your loneliness. I'm not lonely no more, man. That's the last thing on my mind. Any sexual desires, boom. Hey, you know what? I don't have no sexual desires. I'm not lonely, man. I'm cured.
I got 8 friends now.
God cured me. God cured me right there. I'm not even, I have no sexual desire whatsoever. I am not lonely. I'm just thinking, I got to get out of here. Now I'm thinking, like, how do you get up out of this chair? That's what I'm thinking. I'm a strange guy with 8 people, men and women, around a circle here. How do I get up out of this chair without getting beat up? That's what I'm thinking. How do I get up out of this chair? Now, wait a minute. They might think I'm an undercover cop. All kinds of stuff's going through my mind. They might think I'm an undercover cop here to check them out. I mean, all kinds of stuff's racing through my mind. I'm like, I want to get out so bad. How do I do it? That's what I'm thinking in my mind. Because you got to play act, I say, okay, listen, even if I lose my life, I stood up, and I just walked out. Now I'm all by myself in a neighborhood that I don't belong in. So I don't even have my helper with me. She left earlier. She left me hanging. I'm in there with all these strangers. She went back out the door. I don't know where she went. Maybe she got my $10. I don't know. She was gone. She was gone. She was gone. Now God's ready to hit me with a steel baseball bat. I'm like, oh God, get me out of this. Get me out of this. Save my life. Because I know I've seen a lot of people die in those circumstances.
Yes, absolutely.
Lay up in an alley, getting blown up like a balloon. And I'm walking down those narrow stairwells, and I'm thinking, I know what's out front. I know there's a gang of guys out front, and I'm walking by myself. I hid my wallet in my vehicle. I got my keys, and I'm walking out, and I'm thinking, God, get me through that gang out front. And I walked out like I belong. You got to put on a good show. I walked out. They didn't say, yo, what's up? I was scared to death they'd call me or something, come on over here, And it's like, if they did that, it's like, should I run or should I walk over? Now, if I run, they're going to chase me, I've been chased many times, and I know what that feels like. But I walked through. I was walking down the sidewalk, and they didn't pursue me, and I got in my vehicle. They were perfect gentlemen. I was shocked. Perfect gentlemen. Got in my vehicle, and I left, and I prayed all the way home. God, you keep speaking to me. I got to get a handle on loneliness and sexual cravings. I've got to get a handle on this. And I prayed and prayed and prayed. It took me a while to work through those issues. That was the big issue at hand after I got saved, is working through trying to get a handle on those kinds of things. It drove me time and time again into abandoned houses, crack houses, with women that are actively using it. It created all kinds of problems for me for the longest period of time. But during that period of time, I remained clean and sober. But it's the addictive behavior and lifestyle that was the bigger thing that I had to wrestle with. But God would use these circumstances to, like a storm, and like nobody said it, but Jesus was saying it in my mind. Oh, sleeper, arise, call upon your God. I felt that in my spirit, and I was calling upon God to save me from myself. And it says that, so verse 7, it says that they cast lots, it fell on Jonah. Then said they unto him, tell us, we pray thee, for whose cause this evil is upon us. Nobody likes questions when you're in a fix. How many questions did God ask Adam? 4 questions. Nobody likes to ask questions when you're state of relapse. That's why you're not going to go to a person for help once you've in that state. You go when you're still sane enough to ask for help. But once you're in that state of mind, you're what? A sleeper. You're not going to ask. You're not going to call. In fact, if you see your sponsor or mentor or whoever or pastor knocking on your door, I can guarantee you're not going to open it. Oh, sleeper, you don't want no one asking you questions. So, again, it's amazing how Scripture is. Adam, 4 questions. Here Jonah's asked 4 questions. That's no coincidence. Why not like 6 questions and then Jonah and then Adam 3 questions? Why 4? Something unique about 4 questions. 4 questions. What is your occupation?
5.
Well, he could say, it's none of your business. Why are you guys asking me questions? It's none of your business what my occupation is. But they said, what is your occupation? Where you come from? You know, just like in the hood. Where you come from? We know you don't belong. You pulled the straw. Where you come from? What's your occupation? What country you come from? You know, last thing you want is, come on, guys. Come on, you're cornering me. I already feel like you're going to throw me over. Why are you asking me these questions? You know, like, I've gotten those questions before, you know, where are you from? Yeah, we know you don't belong here. You're not from here. I've heard those questions like, you know, when you're in a neighborhood, you don't belong. What country you belong to? What people are you from? And he said unto them, I am a Hebrew, and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, which hath made the sea and the dry land. Whoops. I shouldn't have said that, man. I implicated myself. A storm's occurring, and I said, my God is in control of heaven and earth, the sea, and all this here. It says, then were the men exceedingly afraid, and said unto him, what have you done? For the men knew that he fled from the presence of the Lord. See, people know when you're saved and things aren't right. And unsaved people know you don't belong. They know you don't belong. You can't fit in. Once you're saved, it's impossible to fit in with the crowd anymore. They know there's something different about you. Even in a backslidden state, they know there's something different about you. And that's another story I could tell you. And it says, they knew that he fled from the presence of the Lord because he had told them. Then said they unto him, what shall we do, that the sea may be calm? For the sea was wrought and was tempestuous. And he said unto them, take me up and cast me forth into the sea. So shall the sea be calm unto you. For I know that for my sake this great tempest is upon me. That was suicide. There was no life jacket back in those days. There was no life ring out in the middle of the ocean. Just like they can't find that plane that went down into the Mediterranean Sea. He knew if they throw him over, God did not say to him, I'm going to save your life. He knew if you throw me over, my life is done. This is uncertain suicide. It was the bottom of the bottom, the worst of the worst. And sometimes God has to do that to us. A wooden baseball bat didn't work. A steel baseball bat didn't work. Now I'm going to have to take you down to the bottom and really wake you up. And God prepared, again, this is the grace of God. God prepared a fish and swallowed him up. And he said it was like living in hell for 3 days. He had no certainty that his life would survive. But for 3 days he thought. And so sometimes God gets us where we think. I laid out on the ground for 3 days crying out to God when I had a relapse after I got saved. The circumstances drove me to the dirt, and I laid there crying out for help. God will bring you to the brink of disaster to wake you up. That's when you know you're saved. I never doubted my salvation when I was struggling. Just like Jonah, I knew the presence of God. I knew that God was speaking. I had never doubted it. Not at all. So once you're saved, there is no return to that life without consequences.
Hey, tonight, you never noticed this, on 16, it says, then the men, all these men were having different gods, okay? But it says in 16, then the men feared the Lord exceedingly and offered a sacrifice unto the Lord and made vows. Because of this little incident, did all these men get saved?
Yes.
It sounds like it.
The real God.
It sounds like it.
They said, whoa, this guy.
Yeah, this guy's the real
guy's
God.
the real deal.
I got a girlfriend saved because of, it was right after that relapse. She saw how God was working in my life and she got saved. No, it was another one before that. No. Don't bring her up, please. Okay, someone want to close this out?
Praise God. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for the classes and the teaching. Just be with us. Help us walk right. Help us say what we need to say and glorify you, God. Just use us, Father God. Be with the mission. I pray that you bless the mission. Keep everything that needs to come in, coming in. Father God, remove our anxiety.